Thanks for everybody being here together, faculty, staff, generations of students celebrating Founders Day. I'm Lisa Salter, Assistant Dean of William Smith College. I want to let you know about our evening, but to start, I want to borrow the words of our own Dr. Jeffrey Anderson, Professor of Anthropology, to acknowledge the land that hosts the colleges and where we meet tonight. And this is from Dr. Anderson with his permission. May we be ever mindful that the land we occupy has for many centuries been the territory of the Onondaga, the great hill people, commonly known as the Seneca Nation. We extend our deep respect to the Seneca Nation, acknowledge their sovereignty, commit to honoring all treaties pertaining to this land, and devote ourselves to friendship, reconciliation, and partnership. The Seneca people are the keepers of the western door of the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, the world's oldest continual participatory democracy. Therefore, we extend the same recognition and respect to the 5 other nations of the Confederacy, namely the Cayugas, Onondagas, Oneidas, Mohawks, and Tuscaroras. We recognize that these 6 great Haudenosaunee nations have long contributed immensely to the history, culture, economy, and political life of our region, New York State, the United States, and Canada. And finally, may we open tonight's event in a traditional way by expressing thankfulness for the earth, water, air, animals, and plants that have long formed the web of connection to human beings in sustaining life in this place. And to this beautiful expression of gratitude, I add thanks to the people who have made this event possible, including, as you now know well why, Gretchen Emmerich Marr from our office, Dean Payne, my great companion and his assistant dean, Dean Kenzig, who is here always for us, Gabby Martinez, who is here tonight, our graduate student intern, all of our student workers who are phenomenal. I also want to thank our treasured colleague in alumni relations, Chevy Devaney, class of '95, and you'll be hearing from her shortly, for her collaboration on Founders Day and many events throughout the year. I appreciate the great work of our talented colleagues in the Office of Communications, IT services, buildings and grounds, and catering. And this has been a delicious meal. Thanks to everybody. As many of you already know, and many others are discovering, Founders Day is a special event on campus every fall. This year, we have the happy coincidence of pairing it with the 200th celebration of the founding of Hobart College. We just had a wonderful commemoration of the bicentennial of Hobart College that brought so many of us together on campus. And we are here tonight now, together again, celebrating the 114th Founders Day. William Smith College was boldly created on the belief that women are also deserving of the opportunity to lead meaningful, full lives. As Hobart and William Smith colleges have continued to grow, we have sought to extend that education to an increasing diversity of people. An education that makes possible an abundant life is a tremendous legacy to celebrate, and one of the things that we affirm at Founders Day. For this year's Founders Day, we can thank our current students for the theme of transitions, life transitions after college. In particular, to one student, Nima Sella, a senior, the president of William Smith Congress. Unfortunately, Nima, who was going to be one of the moderators, couldn't join us tonight, but there's no doubt about her impact on this event. The theme is transitions. All transitions involve the past, the present, and the future in some way, and sometimes we can see how tightly wound together they are, and I think we're seeing that tonight. We will hear from President Mark Gearan, who was our president for 18 years during a time of tremendous growth of our school, and who has returned and is moving us, the colleges, forward to be bold leaders in liberal arts education. We are happy to have President Gearan and, of course, Mary Hurley Gearan here back on campus and here with us tonight. Yeah. And the students who are here tonight also embody our past, our present, and our future. Our panelists, whom you'll soon meet, are alums, past students, who have returned to their alma mater for this evening to talk about the unique, creative, and fulfilling ways they have moved forward, earning their degrees here. These alums are here to share with our current students bountiful ways to imagine their own futures. And we even welcome, in a very special treat, a group of prospective students who are over in that area, who can witness the kinds of conversations and relationships that we at the colleges excel at. Perhaps you will choose to join us as those members of the classes of 2027, our future students. Now, as we soon hear in a few minutes, as we hear our alumni talk about transitions, I ask that you keep two things in mind. First, I invite us to listen for the ways in which the benefits of a liberal education are woven into their transitions. A liberal arts education intends to free people from internal and external constraints and oppression, and to free people for meaningful, purposeful, unique lives. If we listen closely, I expect we will find that the education here prepared our alums for the paths they have taken, with transitions that have sometimes been seamless, but very often not so much at all, paths in the fields of education, health, law, and public service. And second, I ask you to imagine how these transitions actively propel us forward to engage with life more fully. It would seem that the pandemic is loosening its hold on us. If that's true, we can become more fully present with each other across campus. While they're talking late into the night in residence halls or swept up in unexpected conversations in classrooms, reaching out to the community in volunteer work and internships, even as far as studying in other parts of the world. Listen for the ways in which an education at William Smith, at the colleges, activates curiosity, leads to asking questions, and coming up with answers about how best to live together. And we know here that those discoveries, those creations happen best when we are present with each other in community, in classrooms here tonight. For tonight, I have the happy task of announcing a mentorship raffle as part of our evening, thanks to a brilliant idea from Gabby Martinez, our graduate student intern, and the generosity of our panelists. We have a mentorship raffle. Our panelists have agreed to connect with a student after today's celebration at some point in the manner and timing that works for them and the students whose names are chosen, for some extra mentoring, extra advising later on. So yes, students, during our break, after the panel, you can place the card that you got when you signed in one of the containers that's in the dessert area during the break. And after the question and answer session, Gabby and I will pick names from the raffle, and some lucky few of you will be able to connect with our panelists. So for now, I want to introduce, a little emotional, Dr. Lisa Kensig, Dean of William Smith College, who is absolutely tireless in her commitment to students, and who, as she herself likes to say, is in the business of developing talent. In that earnest and fierce commitment, Dean Kensig is a model for me. Good evening. Hello, everybody. Good evening. Welcome, welcome, welcome. It is wonderful that you're here. What a pleasure to have all of us together, sharing a meal, talking together, generations of students with music. Maybe we can pause the music. I love the music. There we go. Thanks, Gretchen. Gretchen knows what to do. So, thanks for everybody being here together, faculty, staff, generations of students celebrating Founders Day. I'm Lisa Salter, Assistant Dean of William Smith College. I want to let you know about our evening, but to start, I want to borrow the words of our own Dr. Jeffrey Anderson, Professor of Anthropology, to acknowledge the land that hosts the colleges and where we meet tonight. And this is from Dr. Anderson with his permission. May we be ever mindful that the land we occupy has for many centuries been the territory of the Onondaga, the great hill people, commonly known as the Seneca Nation. We extend our deep respect to the Seneca Nation, acknowledge their sovereignty, commit to honoring all treaties pertaining to this land, and devote ourselves to friendship, reconciliation, and partnership. The Seneca people are the keepers of the western door of the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, the world's oldest continual participatory democracy. Therefore, we extend the same recognition and respect to the 5 other nations of the Confederacy, namely the Cayugas, Onondagas, Oneidas, Mohawks, and Tuscaroras. We recognize that these 6 great Haudenosaunee nations have long contributed immensely to the history, culture, economy, and political life of our region, New York State, the United States, and Canada. And finally, may we open tonight's event in a traditional way by expressing thankfulness for the earth, water, air, animals, and plants that have long formed the web of connection to human beings in sustaining life in this place. And to this beautiful expression of gratitude, I add thanks to the people who have made this event possible, including, as you now know well why, Gretchen Emmerich Marr from our office, Dean Payne, my great companion and his assistant dean, Dean Kenzig, who is here always for us, Gabby Martinez, who is here tonight, our graduate student intern, all of our student workers who are phenomenal. I also want to thank our treasured colleague in alumni relations, Chevy Devaney, class of '95, and you'll be hearing from her shortly, for her collaboration on Founders Day and many events throughout the year. I appreciate the great work of our talented colleagues in the Office of Communications, IT services, buildings and grounds, and catering. And this has been a delicious meal. Thanks to everybody. As many of you already know, and many others are discovering, Founders Day is a special event on campus every fall. This year, we have the happy coincidence of pairing it with the 200th celebration of the founding of Hobart College. We just had a wonderful commemoration of the bicentennial of Hobart College that brought so many of us together on campus. And we are here tonight now, together again, celebrating the 114th Founders Day. William Smith College was boldly created on the belief that women are also deserving of the opportunity to lead meaningful, full lives. As Hobart and William Smith colleges have continued to grow, we have sought to extend that education to an increasing diversity of people. An education that makes possible an abundant life is a tremendous legacy to celebrate, and one of the things that we affirm at Founders Day. For this year's Founders Day, we can thank our current students for the theme of transitions, life transitions after college. In particular, to one student, Nima Sella, a senior, the president of William Smith Congress. Unfortunately, Nima, who was going to be one of the moderators, couldn't join us tonight, but there's no doubt about her impact on this event. The theme is transitions. All transitions involve the past, the present, and the future in some way, and sometimes we can see how tightly wound together they are, and I think we're seeing that tonight. We will hear from President Mark Gearan, who was our president for 18 years during a time of tremendous growth of our school, and who has returned and is moving us, the colleges, forward to be bold leaders in liberal arts education. We are happy to have President Gearin and, of course, Mary Herlihy Gearin here back on campus and here with us tonight. Yeah. And the students who are here tonight also embody our past, our present, and our future. Our panelists, whom you'll soon meet, are alums, past students, who have returned to their alma mater for this evening to talk about the unique, creative, and fulfilling ways they have moved forward, earning their degrees here. These alums are here to share with our current students the bountiful ways to imagine their own futures. And we even welcome, in a very special treat, a group of prospective students who are over in that area, who can witness the kinds of conversations and relationships that we at the colleges excel at. Perhaps you will choose to join us as those members of the classes of 2027, our future students. Now, as we soon hear in a few minutes, as we hear our alumni talk about transitions, I ask that you keep two things in mind. First, I invite us to listen for the ways in which the benefits of a liberal education are woven into their transitions. A liberal arts education intends to free people from internal and external constraints and oppression, and to free people for meaningful, purposeful, unique lives. If we listen closely, I expect we will find that the education here prepared our alums for the paths they have taken, with transitions that have sometimes been seamless, but very often not so much at all, paths in the fields of education, health, law, and public service. And a second, I ask you to imagine how these transitions actively propel us forward to engage with life more fully. It would seem that the pandemic is loosening its hold on us. If that's true, we can become more fully present with each other across campus. While they're talking late into the night in residence halls or swept up in unexpected conversations in classrooms, reaching out to the community in volunteer work and internships, even as far as studying in other parts of the world. Listen for the ways in which an education at William Smith, at the colleges, activates curiosity, leads to asking questions, and coming up with answers about how best to live together. And we know here that those discoveries, those creations happen best when we are present with each other in community, in classrooms here tonight. For tonight, I have the happy task of announcing a mentorship raffle as part of our evening, thanks to a brilliant idea from Gabby Martinez, our graduate student intern, and the generosity of our panelists. We have a mentorship raffle. Our panelists have agreed to connect with a student after today's celebration at some point in the manner and timing that works for them and the students whose names are chosen, for some extra mentoring, extra advising later on. So yes, students, during our break, after the panel, you can place the card that you got when you signed in one of the containers that's in the dessert area during the break. And after the question and answer session, Gabby and I will pick names from the raffle, and some lucky few of you will be able to connect with our panelists. So for now, I want to introduce, a little emotional, Dr. Lisa Kensig, Dean of William Smith College, who is absolutely tireless in her commitment to students, and who, as she herself likes to say, is in the business of developing talent. In that earnest and fierce commitment, Dean Kensig is a model for me.
Thank you. That was so lovely. I really appreciate that. What a great evening this is. This is one of my favorite events of the whole year. First of all, it's gorgeous. Thank you to Gretchen and our amazing staff here. I also just want to recognize that we've got 5 alums back with us tonight, all of whom I knew in their very first days here at the colleges. Every single one of them I knew as a first-year student. They're all looking down. They don't want to look at me right now. But every single one of them I knew well. And I keep a list, which is something that most people don't know. I keep a list of alums that I want to make sure I get a chance to bring back to the colleges. And I often start that list before you ever even graduate. People who I know, because of the impact they're having while they're students here, will be extraordinary people to bring back to have that impact later. And the 5 alums that we're seeing tonight, I'm looking at the oldest of them now, who's still not very old at all 5 of them have lived extraordinary lives, but I was honored to know them well as students. And I'm looking at some students that we have now here at the colleges, and I know they will be people who are on my list and that I will be calling in 10 or 15 years to come back and speak at this very event. And so it is such a privilege in this job that we have, that we're so privileged to have in the William Smith Dean's office, to get to know every student so well, get to see their ups and downs, get to see them get through that first year and other moments that lead them to tears often in my office. I still mark the Kleenex boxes. One of you asked me about this. So several years ago, I realized how many Kleenex boxes I go through every year in my office. So I started to write the number on the bottom of every Kleenex box. The record is 13 Kleenex boxes for the class of '08, which was Stephanie's class. Yeah, I'm just saying. No, I don't think you ever cried. You were too stoic. Yeah, a student athlete, very stoic. But you know many who did. So 13 is still the record, and feel free to try to top that. I'm just saying, it looks like we're getting close this year already. But I think those tears are actually representative of this extraordinary change and transformation that happens to you while you're here at Hobart and William Smith. This extraordinary way of learning more about who you are is hard. And it has moments that are not very comfortable, and moments that lead you to the people who you see as mentors. And I think one of the most amazing things to me when I reached out to each of you and said, who would you like us to invite to be here at the dinner with you tonight, was the long list of people who you wrote. These rich relationships that you had formed while you were here, with faculty, with staff, with deans, with people in our community, with Mrs. Guerin. I think everybody had Mrs. Guerin on her list pretty much. All of you, these rich relationships that you have, and to me that is the defining difference here. This community of people coming together to support you on that developmental journey while you are here at the colleges, to be here for every moment of the good and the bad, to reflect back to you all of the potential that we see in you. And when I think of us being partly responsible for talent development, what I see is that sparkly person as a first year that Eden certainly was, that sparkly person that I know Megan was, who helped me start the First Generation Initiative all those years ago, that has turned into this amazing thing, and that was just she and I with conversations in my office. The ways in which each of you have so profoundly been impacted by all of these extraordinary mentors, and the way in which you have grown from those first years, with those bright eyes, and sometimes bright with tears, but nonetheless, bright eyes, and the way in which you change and transform. And I'm looking at students all around this room at different places in that journey, and seeing you and the way in which you represent your own journey here, but also the journey of so many other students who have been through this place. And so it's such a privilege to have these 5 alums, all of whom said yes to me. So here's also another secret. I'm just revealing it all tonight. I only thought we would get 3. And I called 5, thinking at least 2 would say no. And everyone said yes, which was a thrill. So we have 5 amazing people tonight, which I am so excited about. And I wanted to just take a moment to recognize a couple important people who are here with us tonight. First, we have quite a few alums who are here with us tonight. So all of you are alums, if you could just stand, Hobart William Smith alums, if you could just stand for just a sec. There's several of you here. Please stand up. I don't care if you just graduated in May or if you graduated many years ago. Please stand. Look at all these great alums we have, including our own intern, Gabby, here. several alums joining us tonight, one of whom is Michael Rollins of the Walt Disney Company right here in the front, who has been a mentor for Hobart and Williamson students for over 30 years. And those of you who are alums know this because you're serving as mentors every day. But those of you who are current students should know that this extraordinary community of people who are alums and parents of other students who have graduated will be an extraordinary network for you to tap into as you look to graduate school, as you look to those first jobs after college and beyond. And I think that's really important to know. I think, Michael, you told me 5 of the 6 siblings in your family came to the colleges. And for over 30 years, you've been mentoring. I know many students you've been mentoring over the years. And what a great gift that has been to us. So we are glad you could be here and that you serve on our Board of Trustees now. Thank you so much. And thanks to all of you who are here. And now I have the great privilege of introducing someone I know very well. And many of you, I could go on about the long intro here, but the things I want to say are that I was lucky enough to serve for 14 of his 18 years while he was president the first chapter. And I learned so much over those 14 years. And what a joy that was. But one of the great things that was such a gift to me personally, and to I think a lot of students who are here, which I don't think is a part of your intro most of the time, but I'm going to say it, which is what an extraordinary parent you have been to 2 amazing daughters. When I moved here, my children were 3 and 4. That was 20 years ago. Yeah, I know. and your children, I think, were not that much of a different age, but I think Madeline might have been going into 5th grade. And she pulled me aside at a first event that I was at your house, and she said, "Lisa, I just want to make sure you're having a good experience." This is a 10-year-old. That your family, you and the girls are having a good experience. If there's any way in which I can be helpful to you, I hope you'll let me know. And honestly, it's been 20 years. I think she's exactly the same. And then we were lucky enough to have Mark and Mary's younger daughter, Kathleen, here as a student, and I got to serve as her dean, and that was a real honor as well to get to know her. And what I thought was so great about what a wonderful father you were while you were here was the generations of Hobart and Williamson students who got to see that. They got to see work-life balance from the president of the colleges here. Saw the deep commitment you had not only to your own 2 children, but to all the many other people's children who have come through that you have mentored and you and Mary together have been such an important part of. And we're so happy that you're back here. So please join me in welcoming the president again of Hobart and Williamson Colleges, Mark Aaron.
If that's Truth Day for Dean Kensig, I'm all for it. Thank you, Dean, for those generous remarks, and good evening, everyone. I'm thrilled to be here. I will start with just a reflection, and then we can get into a little conversation. But I cannot begin an event here at the colleges without acknowledging the passing of our colleague, Professor Grant Hawley, who taught at this great place for 52 years. 52 years. He dedicated his life to our students and to our colleagues and to all of us. So as we reflect on our very appropriately Founders Day, and as Dean Salter has centered us in a lovely, lovely way of the importance of this occasion, as for many of us, a friend of Grant's and a colleague of Grant's, perhaps current students of Professor Hawley's, but all of us in a collective gratitude for what he has brought to this campus. I place him in this moment. I've been thinking of, I think it was a Bob Dylan song, Forever Young, right? Which just summarizes Grant Hawley for those of you who can reflect on it. He had panache, he had spirit, and his mind was as young as his youthful exuberance and black turtleneck with 0% body fat, which I always said to him, Grant, that just is so annoying for me. But he was a valued colleague and prized friend, so we call out Grant for what he's done here. But Mary. Oh yeah, that's good. I married very well. Mary's already bailing me out here up here. But it's true. When I sadly had to send a note to the community, I got very nice notes from many folks in this room and others, including a former colleague, a member of the faculty here, who was working at a polling station. And he said, you know, Grant was just in voting. And then I got another colleague letter saying, I just saw him in the Medbury parking lot walking to you. So we had his sort of chronicled days, but to no surprise for those of us who knew him, his citizenship and love of community was evidenced by his commitment to our students and his civic duty with recording his vote. So absolutely. So with that, let me thank you, Dean Kensig, for those nice remarks, and Dean Salter and Dean Payne for all you do for all of us and our students, and to our faculty colleagues that are here. Mr. Rawlings, a member of our Board of Trustees, our vice presidents and staff colleagues that are here. Some of you were nice to express charity for my tie, and to say nice tie. And so I said to Mary this morning, I've had this tie in my closet for like 10 years. If you don't wear this to the William Smith Founders Dinner, where in God's name would you ever wear this tie? So in your service of the William Smith Founders Day, we are here. But it's, you're right, we've thought a lot about founding with this bicentennial year and for Hobart College. And I was here at the centennial of William Smith College as president. So I've been president during a bicentennial and a centennial. So I look pretty good for 100 years old. But our history is important, certainly. And this event, like Dean Kensig, is a great one for us to reflect back on histories. And I love the theme of this event of transitions. I know a little bit about transitions this year, and the import of transition, the possibilities for transitions, the concern and terror perhaps of transitions. But I think we'll see tonight the joy and the exploration and true lives of consequence that will be before us. So I think this is a real opportunity for us all to be engaged in this way. We all know what déjà vu is, right? When you feel like something that you're familiar with. It's that feeling of déjà vu. And Adam Grant had an interesting frame on this where he takes and considers the reverse of déjà vu, that it's vu jadé, meaning you are familiar with something, but you see it in a different lens, in a different way. So I come back after 5 years of being in Boston with a lot of vu jadé. And I come back to this dinner, like Dean Kensig, having now seen these distinguished graduates that I too knew as students. Knew when they were going off to the Peace Corps, knew when they were interested in politics, knew when they were planning their careers. And so it's a great privilege to think of honoring the founding of William Smith with exposing what he had hoped for, which was a more abundant life for women. And I think the lesson to me always of this founding in many ways is the power of an idea. In this case, it was to form a women's college in 1908. And it's pretty interesting to think back to 1908, because next door in Seneca Falls, they were all celebrating the 60th anniversary of the Declaration of Sentiments, right? There was a big celebration. There's evidence of that. There's pictures of Elizabeth Smith Miller there, Miller House. We know that William Smith is friends with Anna Comstock, who was the first woman faculty member at Cornell, Comstock residence. So our histories are interesting, and for me, this power of an idea that William Smith had, radical at the time, has, over the course of this 114 years, led us to this evening. We're fortunate to be in community together, fortunate, as Dean Kensig said, to be in a community that is a relationship-rich environment, and fortunate to be able to celebrate that. So 60 years after that Declaration of Sentiments, 1908, and we must thank Frederick Douglass for publishing the Declaration of Sentiments, a necessary part of the story. We come here today. So I am experiencing this Vuja Day with great pride in what's happened here in these 5 years that I've been away, but more centrally, pride to be part of an institution and a community that has the kind of values that have expanded and opened in our history and provided the kind of opportunities for our students. So I'm excited for this panel. I thank each and every one of them that have answered Dean Kensig's call. 5 calls, 5 yeses. That's a good RSVP rate. I thank our faculty colleagues and Provost Kirk and others that are here, mentors that have been a part of the journeys of our students. And I'm excited to hear from the panelists. This will be fun to have your sense, because I think you're dedicating a lot of time amidst your busy and professional careers. So I'm looking forward to the conversation, the questions, and the opportunity to be a part of it. So thank you all for having me.
Good evening. All right, thank you. I'm Sheva Devani, William Smith class of 1995 and parent of a graduate and a current student. I'm really so excited to be here tonight and to welcome our prospective students who've traveled here with us over the next few days, and you're in for a treat, so, okay. So, on behalf of William Smith alumni, of all William Smith alumni, I am delighted to be here tonight to welcome you and our esteemed panel to this year's Founders Commemoration. It is my pleasure to introduce these remarkable William Smith alumni to share their own stories with you all. And I just want to remind you all that we are recording this evening. And I'm going to apologize right now if I butcher any of your names, panelists. So I did get phonetic pronunciations for a few, so bear with me. Stephanie Nanowski, class of 2008. Steph is a pediatric resident in the University of Rochester Pediatric Residency Program. She was born and raised in Syracuse, New York. At William Smith, she played basketball and was a member of the Women's Collective, graduating with a BS in chemistry and a minor in women's studies. Steph served as a secondary education Peace Corps volunteer in Burkina Faso, West Africa, from 2009 to 2011. That applause came from the previous director of the Peace Corps, first and foremost leading that. Thank you so much, Steph. She then served as the project coordinator of Project REACH, Reducing Alcohol-Related Comorbidities, it's a bit of a tongue twister, in HIV plus men who have sex with men, at Fenway Health in Boston. She attended medical school at the University of New England College of Osteopathic Medicine, graduated in 2021 with her DO degree. Welcome, Dr. Nowonsky. Megan Van Dorp, class of 2013. Megan is adjunct professor of nursing at the Finger Lakes Community College locally, a registered nurse with Rochester Regional Health, a dairy farmer, owner of Van Dorp Farms. After graduating from William Smith, Megan set on a path to become a translator. She was accepted to Kent State University, but when funding was cut for out-of-state students, she became a bilingual customer service representative specializing in financial planning at Paychex Inc. She then spent 5 years working on her family's dairy farm, trying to figure out who she wanted to be before enrolling in nursing school. As a bedside nurse, she believes patients who speak English as a second language receive inferior care. Through wave after wave of the COVID pandemic, she watched a disproportionate number of Latinx patients pass away. These observations led to her master's work in nursing, leadership, and administration at Roberts Wesleyan University. Welcome, Megan. Eden Tesfaye. I'm good? Okay, class of 2014. Eden serves as a Biden-Harris political appointee as Special Assistant to the Director of Intergovernmental and External Affairs in the Office of the Secretary for the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. Previously, she served as a staff assistant for the White House in the Office of Presidential Personnel and as an intergovernmental fellow for the Office of Public Engagement for the 46th presidential inauguration. She was a political fellow for the Biden for President campaign and youth community liaison for the Community Affairs Unit at the Office of the Mayor for New York City. Her prior roles include serving as the Pennsylvania Special Projects Director during the 2016 general election and the Students for Hillary National Program Manager during the 2016 primary cycle. She's originally from Dallas, Texas. Please join me in welcoming Eden. Jackie Fisher, class of 2018. Jackie is an attorney with Fletcher, Heald, and Hildreth, PLC in Washington, D.C. She specializes in regulatory law, transactions, and litigation before federal agencies. As a law student, she served as president of the George Washington University Law School's Student Bar Association at the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic. She now serves on the board of the GW Law Alumni Association. She managed compliance of the bar student and oversaw 70 sub-organizations, represented the student body before administrators, and guided student activity transitions to a virtual academic setting. Jackie gained regulatory experience with refugee settlements, where she helped families navigate federal processes and volunteer organizations maintain compliance with federal licensing agencies. Please join me in welcoming Jackie. Taya Lucician, class of 2019. Taya is a special education teacher at the High School of Fashion Industries. She's currently pursuing her master's degree in adolescence science education with a specialty in students with disabilities while working as a high school special education special education science teacher in Manhattan. She graduated from William Smith with a double major in biology and educational studies. After graduation, she was selected to join the Peace Corps to serve as a youth development volunteer in the Ukraine. Unfortunately, after only about 9 months, all volunteers were evacuated due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Now that expertise, along with all of her knowledge and skills gained and developed at HWS, goes into creating a welcoming, inclusive classroom at her school. Welcome, Taya. And now I have the privilege of welcoming our wonderful student moderator. I will be reading just a little intro on Nima, even though she's not here with us tonight, so you get to know a little bit about her, and then we'll welcome our second moderator. So we had hoped that Nima Sella here, but unfortunately she cannot join us tonight, and that is our loss. Nima is special, so I want to let you know about her. Early on in her college journey, Nima found a passion for entrepreneurship, leadership, and public speaking, which she explored through her participation in several competitions, and was a finalist in the pitch and the leadership case competition. Nima also spent a semester abroad in Spain and became proficient in Spanish, her fourth language. She's a member of Hi Timi and is president of William Smith Congress. I hope you do all get a chance to meet her. And now, I'd like to introduce another amazing student, Tess Weber, 23. Oh, there you are, Tess. Tess is a chemistry major and economics minor from Buffalo, New York. One of her favorite parts of HWS is being involved in the chemistry community through conducting research with Professor DeDennis and connecting with younger students through teaching and fellows. Through the teaching fellows, excuse my language. In addition to working in the lab, she's a member of Hi Timmy and enjoys spending time on the lake for the HWS sailing team. She studied abroad in Copenhagen, and before I say please join me in welcoming Tess, her older sister, also a William Smith graduate. She looks very much like her sister, so sometimes I will call her Maya. But now, please join me in welcoming Tess and the panel this evening.
Thank you all so much for joining us here today. Thank you, Chevy, for the kind introductions. Before we get started, I just want to say I'm super excited here to be celebrating not only the past of William Smith, but the future that I see in all of you today. So, we just heard amazing bios from these fantastic women, but they are more than just their biographies. On the theme of the night, transitions, I was hoping that we could hear some of the challenges that you have all gone through to get to where you are today. So how about we start with Steph and then make our way down the line.
Is this on? Hello. Oh, there we go. I have some notes so I don't forget anything that I wanted to say. But I'm really grateful to be here today. And I don't know where they are, so we might just go with it.
Can I make a request that you repeat each question before you answer?
Sure.
Cool.
Brilliant. So, yes, life, it's easy to have a biography that it's kind of like the posts on Facebook where everyone looks happy all the time. You're like, yes, that's not real life. Some things for me, amidst all the experiences that I've had, some transitions, some challenges, some things that come to mind. Peace Corps was amazing. It's hard to sum that up in a couple sentences, but there were certainly a lot of challenges, a lot of adjusting to new things, a lot of having an open mind, living without electricity in a small village, in a different culture with a different language, teaching science to like classes upwards of 130 students with just a chalkboard. So that certainly had its challenges. Unexpectedly, even though they warned me about it, but you always think I'll be the one it's not gonna happen to me, even though it happens to everyone, and then you're proven wrong time and time again. So reverse culture shock is very much an experience that you have when you have really embedded yourself in a culture for 2 years, only to come back to a culture that you once knew, but is now just different based on the perspective that you now have. So that was tough and unexpected. I experienced my first period of depression during that time, and it took some time. I worked through a challenging relationship that ended up not working out after 6.5 years. That ended up being a great thing, and I learned a lot, but it was hard at the time. Going through the challenge of finding myself again. Getting into medical school was challenging. You have to take this test called the MCAT. I took it 3 times. I'm sure some people can relate, for different reasons. I developed psychosomatic symptoms to testing week while in medical school, where I was having nausea and like throwing up, like during exam week. So that was fun. Took me like 3 cycles to figure that out. And then lastly, I think a lot of people can relate to this too. I feel like I'm really happy with where I am. I've followed my heart professionally, personally, but I still, to this day, have many moments of imposter syndrome where I just don't feel good enough, don't feel like I deserve it, which is not true, but very much a feeling that I experience on the regular.
Well, thank you. Hello? Thank you. So by request, I'm just going to ask the question again as we move down the line. Can you please share some of the obstacles you've had to overcome in your journey to where you are now?
Absolutely. You're good. Can you all hear me? Okay, great. Wow, this is imposter syndrome, I think, is the theme of the day for me. I don't think it really hit me of how impactful this experience would be on myself, but also on Jada and some other young people I've spoken to before here, my former professors. So to answer your question, imposter syndrome. constantly forgetting that I am supposed to be in the room. I deserve to be in the room. I'm smart enough to be in the room. And I don't think it's just me or women or you or whoever is sitting there thinking, oh my God, this is me. She's speaking to my heart, because I hope I am to somebody here. Just believing in yourself. One of my first bosses in politics, Marlon Marshall, this really just positive guy from St. Louis, grew up with nothing but always believed. And he had the saying that was called, please believe. And on the day Secretary Clinton lost the election, we won't talk about that. At the end of his speech, he said, please believe. And so I constantly remind myself, please believe, because if I don't, then I never will achieve what I want for myself. And so reminding myself that I'm supposed to be there, and that it's okay to be there, and that it's okay to feel like I'm not supposed to be there, because I have to believe. And so, yeah.
Have you ever seen Ted Lasso?
Yes, yes. And Marlon was saying that before Ted Lasso came out, so.
Wow.
Yeah.
He must have inspired Ted Lasso.
I probably.
Great show if you guys haven't watched. So we'll ask the question again. Can you please share some of the obstacles that you've had to overcome in your journey to where you are now? And we're going to pass it to Megan. Oh, sorry, Jackie. My bad.
So my challenge I would call actually a work in progress. So I will update you all in a few months. But I very much struggle with the overextension burnout cycle. And most recently, this culminated in me failing a bar exam. So I'm licensed, I can practice law, but that was a real failure for me as far as you are overextended, you are burnt out, you have spent the last couple years of your life overcoming this weird heightened isolation to now trying to figure out how to be a professional adult. So then to sort of have that thrown back in my face of you actually, here's your failure, here is where your breaking point was really shocking for me, and it was sort of the wake-up call I needed, that I can't put my body and mind through this if I want to have a successful career, if I want to not let my clients down. So we're still working on it. I think we've cut back a little bit on some of the commitments. But I would say to all the students in the room that taking care of yourself is an investment in your long-term success, and that it should be a priority for you. And we're learning how to do it together. I'll let you know if I figure it out.
Thank you so much for your answer. We're going to ask the question one more time. Can you please share some of the obstacles you've had to overcome in your journey to where you are now?
Okay, so similar to Steph, I also went to Peace Corps after college, and I was working as a youth development volunteer, so I was in a much smaller setting. I was working at a youth center, running some English clubs, and I actually was very lucky to be at the site that I was at. It was in Ukraine, in a small city called Lutsk, which was really, really amazing for me. She mentioned the reverse culture shock, and I had the same exact experience. Of course, transitioning to a country where nobody speaks the same language as you is challenging, but you don't expect to feel like an outsider when you come home. And I feel like that was a really, really tough transition for me to start with. And on top of that, I was going home because of the COVID-19 pandemic, so I wasn't anticipating going home at that time. I wasn't thinking about my future plans yet. In my brain, I had a year and a half to possibly 2.5 more years. I was thinking about extending my Peace Corps stay. So I was like really in the mindset of riding it out and enjoying my time in Ukraine when all of that kind of hit me. And then I went home, and everything that I missed about home was different too. I couldn't hang out with my friends. I couldn't go get wings in Buffalo at the restaurants I liked. I was trapped in my house with my family after living across world. So it was really, really a tricky transition back into that. But it ended up being great opportunities in the long run, so we'll touch on that later. But I would say the other thing that has really affected me that's been really challenging is after I did get back on my feet, figure out where I wanted to go with my career and kind of settle in, the war in Ukraine started, and that was really, really challenging to me. After living there, my family is Ukrainian by heritage, so I had family ties to Ukraine in the first place. And then I lived there for a little under a year, was living with families, and made a lot of really close connections in that country. So working full time while kind of coping with what's going on in Ukraine has been a big challenge for me in my current time.
Thank you, and we're saving the best for last. So can you please share some of the obstacles that you've had to overcome in your journey to get to where you are now?
So like many of you, after graduating from Williams Smith, I wanted to go right to graduate school. I was accepted into a program for translation. However, when I realized how much it costs and some of the challenges with funding it, I decided to work in translation first for a few years. I quickly realized that it was not for me. I'm very much an outdoorsy person and didn't want to be at a desk all day. So in hindsight, I'm very thankful that that did not work out because it led me to where I am today. And if I had stuck with that path and not gotten experience in the field, I would be in a very different place today. So if you are interested in going right on to graduate school, it's definitely for some people, but also you'll never be sorry just working with your degree for a few years first to get some experience. During that time, people would probably describe me as like a duck, like bobbing on the water, but paddling frantically underneath. Some days I still feel like that. But there's a lot of challenges that you'll see along the way, and just be able to be resilient, be able to be flexible, bounce back. Everyone will run into something like that, but you'll be better for it in the long run, I promise.
I specifically really appreciate hearing that, considering I'm planning on getting a job and hopefully finding something that inspires me for a lifelong career. Moving on to the next question. Life is quite like a roller coaster, and we talked about the lows, but I'm hoping to talk about some of the highs. And specifically, I feel as though William Smith students struggle celebrating themselves and their successes publicly. So I was hoping that we could get a couple examples shared of some successes, not only the successes, but how you celebrated them. So Eden, how about you start this one?
Okay. So I will, I've been reflecting. I have been trying to think about successes, and I thought to myself, oh my God, hi, by the way. Sorry. I do have ADHD. Mental health is health. I'm staying on message of my job. It's so good to see you. I was thinking, what have I been successful at? I haven't done anything. And I was talking to my mom, and she was like, Edu, and that's my nickname. Yes, you have. And she started naming and listing all these things, and I didn't see them as successes. I saw them as expectations. And so let me give you an example. You asked for an example. It's 2015. And I get pulled into an office. I was working for Secretary Clinton on her campaign, and I was in the HQ office. I was in Brooklyn. It was super sexy. Everybody wanted to be in Brooklyn. And they go, Eden, we know you just signed a lease for 14 months, but we need you to go to Massachusetts. And I was like, okay. And you're going to be on a team of 4 people to run what we call an out-of-state program where we support New Hampshire, a little bit of political strategy here. So all the excited Massachusetts volunteers going to New Hampshire, in addition to that, run the Massachusetts state program to win the Massachusetts primary for Secretary Clinton. Now, Massachusetts doesn't seem like a really competitive state in the primary, but when Bernie Sanders is your primary contender, winning Massachusetts is the equivalent of winning all 4 of the early states, Nevada, Iowa, et cetera, the ones that you hear about in the beginning. It was me, my current boss, or not my current boss, my boss from HQ, we went together, and because he ironically lived in Boston, hence Eden going to Massachusetts. And a couple of other people who were borrowed from Congressman Moulton and Congressman Kathleen Clark, or Congresswoman Kathleen Clark, excuse me. So we go there, they don't give us any money, they don't give us any resources, and they're like, figure it out. Nobody thought we were gonna win. Nobody sent us any help. Nobody made phone calls for us, but I did this thing called the Students for Hillary program. And it just so happened that the Massachusetts chapter was the strongest chapter I had in the country. And even thinking about the fact that I built out 10,000 student followers on our email list, over 3,000 active students across the world to participate in organizing for Hillary. Like, who wanted to call for a random candidate? I mean, she's not random, she's Hillary Rodham Clinton. But who, as a college student in their free time on the weekends. So we finished New Hampshire, we lose terribly. So bad. Look it up after this and you'll understand how bad it was. And she won New Hampshire in 2008, the first time she ran for president. And so nobody believed in Massachusetts. And they stopped returning our phone calls, and they stopped returning our emails. And it wasn't because they didn't care about us. I mean, my boss and the guy who was running our desk, they organized the country into desks, were best friends. They went to college together. Like, it was not personal, it was business. Well, lo and behold, we won Massachusetts, and it was a big freaking deal. See, I didn't curse, Jada. I worked for Charlie Baker, and if you guys know who Charlie Baker is, President Joe knows who Charlie Baker is, he's a legend in the Democratic political circles. You would have thought he was a sailor. So I got over, I think, 200 students to organize for Hillary, beginning in August of 2015 in Massachusetts. Nobody thinking that it was going to actually be competitive or play. And it was one of the reasons why we went into the rest of the election season strong. Why does that matter? Why is that a big deal? I was coming up. I was a young stallion. Nobody knew who I was, and being able to build out an organizing program with no money and nobody knowing your name, and you just being that random girl whose resume they picked out because they needed somebody to fill that job and they were willing to do that job. It was a big deal. And I've had many successes up in, I guess, since then, but I want to point that out because I was 23 at the time. And because of that, I got to pick what my next job was going to be. So, retrospect, believe in yourself. And don't forget to write down your wins, because they might not seem wins to you. They might just seem like your expectations, your accountabilities, what you should be doing, what the minimum bar is, but really it's something much greater than that.
I love the point about recognizing the wins, because I feel like we struggle not only celebrating them, but how would you celebrate anything that you wouldn't even recognize to begin with? So I'm going to repeat the question and pass it to Taya. What are some of the most important personal and career wins you've had so far, and how did you celebrate them?
In honor of us all having imposter syndrome up here tonight, I feel like I shouldn't even be speaking about this after hearing Eden, but I'm happy to anyways. So I would say that just starting out, getting accepted to the Peace Corps felt like a big success to me. And then I would say one of my greatest successes personally, or actually I'll start by saying this. I think it's really important in advance to define your own success. So of course, everyone has their accomplishments, everyone has their expectations for themselves, but defining your own success level and figuring out what makes you feel happy, what makes you feel proud of yourself is a really important step, and it might be really different than what other people see as success. So for me, when I was joining the Peace Corps, something that was really big for me was going back to Ukraine and reconnecting with my heritage and my roots and everything like that. And I felt extremely successful when I was able to learn Ukrainian language, and I tested out at like an advanced mid-level, which was really impressive because going in I could maybe say like, hello, my name is, and that was it. while I was there, I also built up such a strong community, and I built relationships with family members who had been out of contact with my family for a generation or so. So that was really, really a huge success. On top of that, coming home, I think that being able to bounce back within a year-ish time was a really big success for me. And then settling into New York and figuring out what I liked there was a huge success. Now that I've been settled in my job, I am really happy with minor successes even, and they bring me a lot of joy. I am a high school teacher, so I'm working with students every day, and of course there's challenges with that every single day, but every day something good happens too. So maybe it's that two kids that I seated next to each other because they were both quiet, like I noticed that one of them starts asking the other one questions on their worksheet, and that will be a big moment of success. I'll turn around to my teacher that I work with and we'll like make eye contact and like, woo, like we did it, they're talking to someone. So like minor little celebrations like that are really big, but I think the other thing, similar to what you were saying, Eden, and believing in yourself, is accepting those compliments and really taking them to heart, and then allowing that to increase your confidence going forward. So letting your little successes kind of just drive your future planning, and knowing that you're more capable than you previously thought. So each one is a step towards your overall greatest successes, but those day-to-day, that's how you build it. And that's what builds success in the long run.
Yeah, little successes are huge, something to celebrate every day. So the last person, Steph, I'd like you to answer this one. Same question. What are some of the most important personal and career wins you've had so far, and how did you celebrate them?
A lot of that super resonates with me, so thank you. I feel like with my soul sisters up here, like hardcore, like we should all hang out. Yes, let's do it. So I could be up here and talk about getting into Peace Corps, getting into medical school, getting into my #1 residency, and those are all huge and amazing, and I'm super proud of that. And I'll challenge even calling them the minor wins, the little wins, because I think it's those wins that make us who we are. And it's truly getting to a point where you have the self-awareness to just recognize where you're at, recognize all things throughout your day. And it doesn't need to be the big things. And I think it's an accumulation of the small things that gets you to the bigger things, right? You don't just decide to go to law school or, work on a political campaign. You don't just do that overnight. It takes time. It takes dedication. It takes focus. So for me, some of my biggest wins are the little things that I've done for myself. It's going to therapy and meeting with different therapists, like every month, to work on myself. It's learning to be more self-aware and to figure out, okay, I'm having what feeling right now? Okay, I'm gonna recognize it. Ooh, this is a super uncomfortable feeling and I hate it, but getting to the point where I lean into it and I accept it, even if I don't understand it, instead of saying I should not feel this way and trying to fight against it. Because we all know that if you do that, it only gets worse and it certainly doesn't go away. So learning to sit with the discomfort, it's super hard and no one likes to be uncomfortable, but it's also okay to say, you know what, this sucks, I hate this, and I know it'll pass eventually. So I guess I'm just gonna be cranky right now. I'll try not to take it out on anybody. Maybe I'll sit over there by myself. But it's things like that. I've been working a lot on my own body image, right? We're bombarded by this diet culture, this negativity. You need to look this certain way, you need to do this, you need to do that. It's garbage, but we're fed it. And it's insane how toxic and dangerous it is. I just worked in the hospital working with a lot of teens, like 14-year-old, 15, 16, with really severe eating disorders, like so bad that they need to be in the hospital. And it's just like epitomizes the toxicity of diet culture. And so I've been working on a lot of, loving my body, being like, you know what, maybe it doesn't look like they say it should, nobody's body should, but it does a lot for me. I can move, I can function, I am strong. That's amazing. Trying to think if I had anything else to say about that, but primarily it's really just that and also working on my own self-talk. It's hard to focus on the positives, right? It's always easy to look at, okay, this is what I did. This is the one little thing I did wrong. Oh, someone just gave me this glowing review, but there was this one line about like constructive feedback, and that's all I'm gonna focus on. It wears you down. So I think having those affirmations, I'm worthy, I'm strong, I'm smart, I'm capable, and backing it up, because you have the data, you just have to pay attention to it. It can make a huge difference, and it takes practice, and it takes time, and you do not need to be perfect, because you never will, and that's okay, because we're all human.
Thank you, Steph. That's a great segue. I was super intimidated reading all of their bios. They sound so cool to me, and I was like, oh my gosh, I have to interview them. But hearing their successes and their challenges just reminds you, it humanizes them. They are just one of us. Like, they will be us in the future. So let's switch gears a little bit. I know we touched upon the pandemic a little bit, and I've noticed being a first year here, that's when I got sent home for COVID. And I've noticed, and maybe seniors in the room will think the same thing too, William Smith is finally coming back to normal. It reminds me of my freshman year again. Yeah, thank you. But I've found that personally and within the colleges, a lot of students are struggling with re-engagement, finding those clubs, finding those sports teams, getting involved on campus, volunteering in Geneva. So I was hoping, Jackie, if you could take this one, if you could just share how you transitioned back to re-engagement and your thoughts and strategies on it.
Sure. So I'm sort of coming from this, I had a similar experience to a lot of you where I hit the pandemic I went fully remote for law school during the pandemic, and that was from spring of 2020 through my graduation in 2021. So I spent a full year and a half completely online, and the entire time I was thinking to myself, like, oh my God, I have just made the biggest accomplishment of my life thus far. And I don't even get to celebrate it. I don't get a graduation. I'm my class president. It's a tradition I get to give a speech, and I miss all of these things. And so I feel where you guys are right now, where it's you had an experience like that with your high school friends, and with the first time leaving your home, and you've gotten into college, and you're going somewhere you're excited about. So you're dealing with, at the same time, the adjustment to a new place, the resentment of the send-off from your old place, and also trying to figure out where you go next. I think it's coupled with young adulthood in general. I think you guys are gonna feel this way for a lot of your 20s. It's really like, it's something I'm trying to get used to, and I think that one of the ways I've overcome this is I'm using it to motivate me to say, okay, I'm in this transition period. What a better time to have a seat at the table when I feel that there's this great big deal of change, when you are seeing the systems are kind of shaky, and that's the opportunity to see things grow and change and to be a part of that conversation. So I would say, to distill that, you are totally right in how you're feeling, and there is really something that unites this sort of generational, we had to go through this really weird transition period together. And I hope that that's an outlook that you'll use to motivate you instead of have you withdraw.
Thank you. And then Megan, I was hoping you could answer this question again, just on sharing thoughts and strategies on how you transitioned back to re-engagement.
When the pandemic hit, I was working as a newer bedside nurse in the hospital, and we saw a lot of patients come in with COVID, and they were almost like untouchables. No one wanted to care for them at first. It was a very rough period for nurses and for COVID patients. What I gained from that experience in life was that life is too short to live in fear. So many people never said goodbye to loved ones. So many people passed away alone because people were afraid to come in. People were afraid to be in a car with them to bring their loved one home. They hung out with us. So if you're ever in the situation where, do I engage or do I withdraw? Don't live in fear, because there's so much more out there than what you're afraid of.
Thank you. I think one thing that I learned from COVID is that we can't control most things. And despite that I really, really want to, I would love to plan out the next 5 years of my life perfectly. And I know some of you sat in this position recently. And I know a lot of you are probably sitting here too thinking, wow, like I would love to know what class I'm taking every single semester until I graduate. But unfortunately, we cannot do that. So I was wondering, Eden, if you could answer this one. How has your life turned out differently from what you had planned while you were at William Smith? And maybe if you want to add something about how when you were here or something like that.
Okay, yeah. My life. Oh, can y'all hear me? Okay, great. It's nothing that I thought it was going to be, and I'm so happy. I wanted to go to law school right after college. Thank God I didn't. No offense.
Don't joke. No, don't joke.
Thank God.
Don't.
I get in trouble so much by the lawyers. Like, I appreciate you guys so much. They save me every day. I am going back to your first question about, something that was tough and yada, yada, yada. Or as the kids are saying, ba-da-da-da. I left politics for a little bit and became a waitress, and I went back to school to pursue a post-bac in the biomedical sciences because I wanted to study medicine. And I still do, and I'm working in healthcare policy, et cetera. Had my first boss, who I worked for on the Terry McAuliffe campaign, who was former governor of Virginia. He ran last year, but was unsuccessful, unfortunately. All this to say, just trying to provide everybody context. If Brandon didn't sit me down and say, "Why do you want to go to law school?" And I remember my answer. I was like, "Well, I studied political science and English. That's what you're supposed to do." She was like, "No, that's not what you're supposed to do." And she was like, "That's not a good enough reason to spend another $100,000 on education you're probably not going to end up using." Now, I know a ton of lawyers or folks who have JDs who I work with who use their JDs every single day, but they're not barred, et cetera. Had I not decided to do that, I would not have joined Secretary Clinton's campaign. I would have not had the opportunity to then work for Erin Wilson, who brought me onto President Biden's campaign, who then brought me to the White House with her. So all this to say, I've had a whirlwind of an experience that I didn't think was going to happen to me when I first walked through these doors. So it's okay if it's different, and you want it to be different. And to your point, planning 5 years out feels really hard. And I have a Bible verse, and I know we are church and state is separate here, but this is something that I think it relates to whatever your God, you may think your God is, or if it's a universe. So, "For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you a hope and a future." It's Jeremiah 29:11. It is a Bible verse I have kept close to my heart since I was a child. And just as you think about your next step and what's going to come in your life, just keep this in mind. I also study meditation, and I highly recommend you do it as well if you don't. And a kind of Buddhism there, Shambhala. One of my teachers talks about living many lives in this one life. So each different phase, each different experience, you're living another life. And I embrace each life that I get to live in this wonderful long journey of mine that goes by in a blink. And I meant to be contradictory there. And I'll leave you with this. When I was finishing up my post-bac, I was finishing up being a waitress when COVID was starting. And we had to go into takeout, and I was trying to save up so I could apply to med school, which I still am doing. And then that's when I got called to go work on the campaign, yada, yada, yada. And I knew my time was ending at that restaurant. I thought to myself, wow, I'm so blessed to have had this experience, to have been a server, to been a bartender, to see from another person's perspective, to understand what it means to stand on my feet for 14 hours. It humbled me, and it reminded me why I wanted to do the most good in all the ways I could for as many people as I can, for as long as I can. And so, and I'm sorry that was so elaborate. I talk so much. Thank you. So do you. You're like my hero. Thank you. It's okay if it's different, and appreciate the good with the bad and the mediocre and being bored and being excited and running on adrenaline, because it makes you you.
Thank you. Your answer ties perfectly into the theme of the night of transitions. So Megan, I was also hoping to hear your perspective on this question, considering you both work in nursing, but also a dairy farm. I can repeat the question. How has your life turned out differently so far from what you had planned when you were at William Smith?
So I came to William Smith as a very naive farm kid from this area and was very intimidated by what I learned here, because I had never experienced culture or upper education, honestly, like I experienced here. I was a first-generation student, grew up on a farm, had no idea that this world was out here, to be honest with you. What I thought would make me happy coming from William Smith was professional clout and status and gaining all the things that I thought I saw in everyone else. It was when I stopped comparing myself to others that I learned what it was like to truly be happy. It took many years to get to that point, but I appreciate now the fact that I can do manual labor with my family side by side, like we have since my family moved here in the 50s. Caring for our animals. I also can live a professional life. I can care for patients. I can lead my team in the hospital as well. There's so much more to what other people think that you see in them and you think you want that, but I encourage you to be open to what not only your roots are, but also any wings that you sprout here too.
Thank you so much. For our next question, Dean Kensig and my advisor would both laugh at this. I would like everyone in the room to raise your hand if you've ever struggled saying no. Okay, so we have a large majority of this room struggle saying no. It was actually a lesson that my advisor taught me this past summer. It was like her goal of the summer, and I am proud to say I've said no more this semester than I ever have during my college career. So I was hoping, Jackie, if you could answer this one. How have you learned to say no, and when do you say no? And if so, please share your secret with all of us.
All right, so part of the reason why I volunteered to answer this question is an accountability mechanism. As we've discussed, I struggle with this big time. So I'm gonna give you the 4 things I'm doing. So far they're working, but if you catch me slipping, please speak up, okay. So the 4 things: 1, make good observations. 2, your calendar is your friend. 3, 2, your calendar is your friend. 3, you have to apply the same boundaries to your personal life. And 4, you need to find an accountability buddy. So to elaborate on each of those, observation, you are going to spend some time in your job, in your professional life, in your environment, and you're gonna figure out when someone says, hey, I need you to turn this around by tomorrow, and you're gonna know, you don't actually need this tomorrow. You're not gonna look at this until Thursday. I can push back. Okay, so be observant, take the time to notice those things, and take the no's where you know they're safe. Sometimes, yeah, I'm a lawyer, I will hear an emergency and it does have to be taken care of that night or that day. And yeah, I can't push back on those, so push back where you can, figure that out. Second was your calendar is your friend. Everyone else in your office has Google or Outlook. If something is important to you and it's time that you value and it's something you've planned ahead, throw that on your calendar, or even block out large chunks of time where it's not even a specific event, but just say, like, I'm unavailable after 6:30 p.m. whatever time that makes sense for you. But putting everyone on notice and putting that in writing, I think really helps you stick to the fact that like, I've already blocked this time off. Third, what was my third point? Oh my God, I did write all this stuff. Personal boundaries, yes, okay. So right now,
Taking notes herself.
yeah. So something you'll learn after you graduate, I think, is that personal boundaries become a little trickier. Right now, you're kind of all on the same schedule. Your vacations all line up. Generally, your classes kind of happen within the same time frame. And you're all sort of confined to this particular geographic area. That's gonna get way harder when you have friends across 5 different cities on 2 different coasts, and one of them's getting married, and then the other one has her bachelorette party, and then the other one is having a birthday party. It looks completely different, and I had my first like mega wedding summer, and oh my God, it's rough. So understand that as you're a young professional, you have to say no in your personal life as well. And one of the ways I found to do that is I've broadcasted to my friends, Sunday is my personal day. Don't ask me to make plans with you on Sunday. I will not be there. Yeah. And then last, accountability buddy. The most commonly uttered phrase in my household is, Jackie, are you sure that's a good idea? If this is something you're serious about, saying no more, articulate that goal to someone in your life who you trust, because they will call you on it. And then you'll have to face them when it blows up in your face, and they'll be like, yeah, maybe you didn't need to go to that 8:30 a.m. meeting after the Halloween party. So yeah, all right, to wrap it up, this is the Lawyer Suite, 4 points again. Observation, calendar is your friend. Personal life boundaries, and find an accountability buddy. Thank you. You've been lawyers. Oh, thank you.
I will be writing those 4 down in my notebook and taking notes. Steph, I hope you can follow up. How and when do you say no?
How do you follow that? I know. That was amazing. I'm going to echo some similarities, I think, and then some things I've already said, because it's all about that repetition. At least that's how my mind works. Yes. A lot of it comes from having some self-awareness and being able to check in. I think we always expect, do you ever have those moments where you're like, oh, I'm so stressed, but I feel like, you compare it to a former self version of you, and you're like, but I was able to do this before, and you forget that it changes. Your stress levels change. What's happening in your life changes, and it affects what you can do. It really does, and yet we're like, oh, I'm giving like my C game, but really you're giving your A game. You just have a lot more crap that you're pushing up against than you were X years ago, X months ago, last night. Like, it just depends. So I think checking in with yourself and realizing and giving yourself the grace to be like, okay, where am I at? And thinking about, what do you actually want? It's always going to be hard to say no. Nobody likes that. You want to be helpful, especially if it's a friend or if it's at work and you're like, oh, I really want to help this person out, but you have to check in with yourself and like, where is your cup? How full are you? Some people talk about like having enough spoons. A friend of mine broke that down, and I like this better. Each day you start with like, your energy is like a pie. And you only have so many pieces of that pie before the pie is gone for the day, and that's it. And so you think about like, how many pieces do I have left? And what else do I need to have? Like, do I need to save some pieces for later? And so I think getting to a point where you can see, A, do I have energy to do this? Is this going to get me somewhere in the future, right? 'Cause sometimes maybe you don't want to do something, but leaning on somebody or helping somebody out, maybe you can lean on them in the future. So thinking about things like that, but it's always okay to say no. It's also okay when you say no to feel uncomfortable. That's real. That doesn't mean not to say no, but it's hard. It takes practice. And then sometimes having little phrases. Like, you do not need to have an excuse, even though, especially as women, you feel like you do, because we're trained to not be able to say no because we need to submit, which is total BS. I would love to be a sailor too. We'll do it. So like, it's okay to say no. You don't have to give a reason, even if they ask. So the other thing too that can be helpful sometimes is practicing a phrase. So ahead of time, like practicing something like, sorry, I wish I could, but I have plans. Sorry, I have something else to work on tonight. What else did I write down? I wish I could help, but I can't right now. You don't need, again, you don't need to say why. You're gonna want to, you're gonna feel like you have to, but you don't. If you feel comfortable sharing the why, you can, but you don't have to. And then another thought, like, I can't, but I hope you find someone who can. Or honestly, if you're at a point where it's someone looking for help, oh, but maybe so-and-so can, or that kind of thing. So those are things that can help. So check in with yourself. How much energy do you have? Do you want to do this thing, whether it's professional, personal, like, right? Like if you want to, and you know it's going to make you tired because you're staying up at this Halloween party and you got this meeting the next day, but you're like, nah, I want to rock out with my friends. I want to dress up like a banana and, you know, have some fun. Then do it, right? But that's a choice. So check in. Do you have the spoons or the, you know, piece of the pie? And then it's okay to say no, and you don't have to tell them why.
I would like to reemphasize that the pie was an energy thing, not a time thing. On to the next question. Eden, I was hoping you could answer, how do you make sure that your voice is heard when working in a group, ensuring that your strengths are best utilized in a way that others can hear and appreciate?
I don't know if they're ready for this conversation.
And we might be running a little bit shorter on time if we can.
I thought so. I feel like that's my fault. I'm trying to think of the appropriate way of saying these things. It's supposed to be hard. If it wasn't hard, everyone would be doing it. The hard is what makes it great. This was a remake, or this movie is now a remake, if you guys know what line I'm quoting. It's from A League of Their Own. I'm often the only woman, the only black woman in a room full of white men who have PhDs and MDs from Harvard, Yale, or folks who have worked for XYZ president or have served in X country doing national security or former CIA, yada, yada, yada. And I've had to constantly prove myself. And it's incredibly difficult and it's incredibly taxing, and the toll it has taken on my mental health to continuously do that has been really challenging, right? But I realize that my work speaks for itself. And so showing up every single day and staying consistent and knowing what my goals are and continuing to speak my truth and present my knowledge in a way that is different and adds value, and reading the room and knowing who my allies are and how to talk to my allies in front of others and how to position others around me to look successful, to be successful in those discussions, in those rooms, in the rooms where it happens for our Hamilton fans. Taking a step back, if it was easy, everybody would be doing it. So it's about being self-aware and strategic about how you handle yourself. And humor. I find that humor is the best way to really have somebody hear you in a space, because if people like you, they'll listen to you.
Megan, I was hoping you could answer the same one. Just how do you make sure that your voice is heard in a room full of other people?
To go along with what Eden said, there's a lot of proving yourself you'll find in your first few years, especially outside of Hobart William Smith. I found this in agriculture, with the average age of an American farmer being over 57 and predominantly male. If you can go in there and show that your actions speak louder than your words, go in, put in the extra mile, be the first one there, the last one to leave at the end of the day, while still maintaining that work-life balance that we all talk about. Being able to do those small things will always add up to the big things in the long run.
Thank you. And since we are celebrating Founders Day, I was hoping that people could talk about what part of the liberal arts education at William Smith helped to build and impact your confidence, and or What parts of William Smith helped to build your confidence and impacted your life choices? Jackie, if you could take this one first.
Okay, so this is actually what I wrote my law school admissions essay on. Is, to me, I see the liberal arts as an exercise in the practice of empathy. And I was able to explore that through so many different avenues here. I was in our theater department and got to learn under Professor May about the use of theater as a means to step outside of yourself and how to create real feeling in imaginary circumstances. And that's something that all of us have to do every day. We have to figure out and be able to get in tune with the world around us. And I feel like that is what the liberal arts gave me. And then this is something I've noticed more as an adult and as my professional career has developed is it works out that Professor Philip Yadav is here as well, because one of the things I remember you teaching me was to be very wary of any sort of hypothesis explanation that's like about someone's culture or their personal characteristics. Always look for the structural problems. And that's all liberal arts is where are the structural problems? And I find that just rewiring your brain and having that mindset of don't assume it's about the person, assume it's about the structure around them, has led to such productive conversations I've had in my professional life and in a leadership role and figuring out where other people are and where they're coming from and my friends. And I could not be more grateful for the opportunity I had to learn at William Smith from so many incredible people. And I hope that my practice of empathy and my learning of this empathy does show up in my work.
Thank you so much. Taya, I was hoping you could answer the same question. What experiences from your years here, particularly at our liberal arts institution, helped to build your confidence and impacted your life choices?
Okay, well, Jackie, once again, that was an amazing answer. Tough to follow. Well, I wanted to talk a little bit about when I came to William Smith, I was coming in as a bio major. I was thinking about double majoring in econ because I was obsessively type A, like a lot of people when they start college, I think. I actually was in a urban economics class that was service learning based, and I ended up starting to work at the Boys and Girls Club with the tutoring program. And that 100% shifted like everything I had intended for myself. And it was just because of the service learning aspect of our liberal arts education here. To build off of that, after I was completing my sophomore year, as I was going into junior year, I realized that, okay, I definitely don't want to go to med school either. I don't want to be a doctor. No offense.
No, save yourself a lot of struggle.
And I added an education major, which was an opportunity that was just arising. And those classes, like you were just saying, Jackie, just really taught me to change my perspective in a very different way and approach social issues in a different way, which makes a huge difference in a classroom and made a huge difference entering Peace Corps and going into a different culture and going into a totally new setting. Specifically, my civil rights education class and my Rethinking Families classes, I constantly go back to. Mentally, I just think more like you said about the structures, and it really does. It helps with my empathy, and it helps with acceptance, and it helps me not only accept diversity in different situations, but really celebrate it. And I think that I learned a lot of that here at William Smith.
Thank you so much. And we're going to wrap up with the last question of tonight. We can just go down the line and start with Megan. What advice would you give to the students here tonight about how to make the most of their time here at the colleges and how to manage the theme for the night, transitions, past college?
My biggest piece of recommendation would be to study abroad. I was lucky enough to go twice. It was my biggest fear, and it actually required some counseling that I needed to be able to overcome that fear to go study abroad. And then I loved it so much I had to go again. So I would recommend that. It opened doors to me that I never would have believed possible, being a local farm kid, to see Argentina and then also to see Spain. As far as managing your transitions goes, I would say do not rush the process. No one is better for having a master's, no one is better for having a doctorate. They're better for the experiences, the classes that grounded them and that gave them that experience and led them to where they are.
Okay, to build off of that, I would say lean into everything and listen to yourself. It's a rocky road out there. It's been a rocky road for all of us, and you know, you hit your bumps, you take your tumbles, but it all leads to new opportunities. So paying attention to what you want in that time, even if it's not what you wanted yesterday, if it's not what you wanted a month ago, if it's not what you wanted when you graduated college, listen to what you want now and try to move forward with that as your future goal and let go of things that might seem like failures or things that you didn't do. That's what they are. They're things you didn't do, and it doesn't matter. So just keep kind of pushing forward and focus on your successes and listen to your current desires.
So co-signing all of that, I would add, I told you all to say no, and now we're giving you a to-do list, okay. But one thing I would just say, which this is something that can go on in the background of your life, but do, as you're here, invest the time in your relationships. I am still so close with so many of the people I went to college with. I live around the corner from 2 people I graduated with, and it feels like we're all back in Geneva again, and it's beautiful. But when you're in those hard moments, when we're in those struggle moments that we all discussed, I'm sure we didn't get out of them just through our own like ability to lift ourselves up. It wasn't that we just pulled ourselves by the bootstraps and got through it. It was that I had mentors I could call on. I had people in my life who supported me and cared about me and who I'd invested a lot of time in that relationship, and they could be there when I was down. So I would say don't underestimate that as you're transitioning through this life phase and you're going through those growing pains. It means a lot to have people that you love and who care about you around you.
I just want to say that and answer the question before real quick. I learned how to write here. Thank you, Professor Carson and Professor Mink, for never giving me an A and always making me work better and harder. No, I'm being serious. I am an orator because of them. And I come from a second-generation family or first-generation American family. English is not my first language, but I can write really well because of my professors who are here today. And thanks, guys, for coming. But I just wanted to say that. Second, have the audacity to do the thing you think is ridiculous. The first job I got out of college was because I set up a meeting with President Guerin. I was very intimidated at the time. I still am, sir. And I asked him to help me get a job on a campaign that would give me experience in Democratic politics. And he didn't help me, but what he did was, he did help me, but it's not like he called somebody and said, give her this job. He gave me the opportunity to get connected with folks I wouldn't have had that opportunity to do. And had I not asked him, had I not asked Mrs. Guerin for advice as to how to approach him, and had I not asked Professor Deutschman, who's no longer here, I would not have done that. So make the ask. Even if you think you aren't qualified or it's ridiculous or, oh, I can't do this, do it. If you think you can't afford to study abroad, yes, you can. I thought that. It is my biggest regret that I went to the DC program. I mean, the DC program was great. Please don't ever tell Professor Rimmerman or Frischman I said that. It was great. But I could have gone to England. I could have gone to France. Don't miss out on those opportunities because you come from humble starts. Like, you can still do it because they let you. And lastly, go talk to your professors, even if they seem intimidating. Whatever, it's their job. And they want to. They really do. And getting to know them is the best thing you can do. Not just for your grade tomorrow, but for moments to reflect on when you're old, like me, and I guess the rest of us on here.
I echo all the things. Oh, my heart is so full right now. I'll just read a list, so we'll, not take too long, but you don't grow when you're comfortable and in your safe zone. Go for what you want, especially when it's scary. The best things in my life, I've literally said, have been both exciting and terrifying. Some of my best friends are just for me saying, hey, I think we should be friends. Ask questions, explore, try things you're curious about. Be kind to yourself. Check in with yourself, how you're doing, where you're at. Get help when you need it. Ask for it. Whether it's therapy, medication, meditation, there's many different ways out there, moving your body. The sky's the limit, but find something that works for you. If you're not supporting yourself, you're not going to be able to put your best self out there. You need to fill your cup before you can start using it. You don't want to deplete it and then try to go from empty. That doesn't work. Hashtag burnout. We've all been there. It's not fun, so fill it up before you get on empty. And it's okay to be wrong. You're going to be wrong. It's okay to make mistakes. You're definitely going to make mistakes. I've made countless mistakes. Own it. Apologize when you need to. Learn from it. Move on and do better.
Thank you so much. Thank you to all of the panelists and your amazing answers tonight.